I'll give you a little background on this section. As I said, my main character, John Templeton, is a disgraced reporter. This is set about 20 or 25 years in the future. One of the speculations I offer is that there aren't many actual paper or newspapers left. So what he works for is referred to as a news org, which is a combination of web, radio, and TV. But he fulfills very much the same old investigative reporter role. He's been a very successful investigative reporter, and he ended up losing his, at this point he is on the verge of losing his job because his coworker who has tried to seduce him, and he has fended off her advances. And he has escaped to his favorite diner to sort of soothe himself and recoup for his next battle. By the standards of a tourist strolling past looking for a quick lunch, the place was a dive. The sign on the window was small and easy to miss, and the antique feel of the place wasn't the prepackaged old shit on the wall nostalgia that came with so many chain restaurants. The cafe was just old, and everything about it said old. But John liked it that way, if only because it kept the tourists away and spared him from overhearing imported ignorance when there was plenty of local ignorance to go around. The place was empty this morning save for the cook, a waitress who John knew only as Betty, and an elderly gentleman in a pork pie hat and a Hawaiian shirt. The old guy sat on the far stool mumbling to himself about damn commie Cubans and how their efforts towards statehood were really a Castro-planned plot. Never mind that Castro had been dead for 15 years and that the only plots going on in Havana were for new casinos and an expanded Navy base. As John sat, the man grew louder and more agitated. He then started reciting what John recognized as 20th century movie titles, suddenly fixing John with a direct gaze and blurting out in a spray of toast crumbs, "Dead man walking!" "Archie, hush up," Betty said. She looked at John and shook her head in a way that said, "Poor old thing." "Dead man walking! Sean Penn, Susan Sarandon, 1996, 3 stars from Siskel and Ebert," he said before returning to his Cuba rant. "Lord, it's bad to get old," Betty said without specifically acknowledging her other customer. Over the grill, a compact sound system played an old reggae song, "Pressure Drop," John recognized by its chorus. For the moment, the artist escaped him, but the beat was infectious and moved John to tap his fingers in time on his knee. The pressure was indeed dropping on him, and all at once, it seemed. Betty reached into the cooler below the counter and produced one of the few vices John could still lay claim to, an icy green pinch-waist glass bottle of Coca-Cola. "What you want today, baby?" She popped open the cap using an old-fashioned counter-mounted opener and placed it in front of her. She then looked at her dainty lady's watch, which seemed microscopic on her huge, coal-colored arm, and regarded him suspiciously. "Kinda early for lunch, ain't it?" "Yeah, I guess. Just some chili cheese fries, I think. I can't stay away from work too long. It looks like it's going to be one of those days." She scribbled the order on a blank white pad and clipped it to the vent hood where the cook, a caramel-complected man as skinny as Betty was huge, was monitoring the grill and deep fat block fryers. "This early in the day and already having trouble? That's a bad sign, baby. Don't say much for what's to come." "No, it sure doesn't. Almost makes me want to head to the beach and not come back when they start off like this," he said, as he chuckled softly and contemplated the marketing genius of the Coke bottle's not-so-subtle female shape. John found women like Betty, though friendly enough to make customers feel welcome, always maintained a good-natured sense of detachment. So he was taken aback when Betty turned from shaking a basket full of fries with a truly concerned look on her face. "Lord, child, you did have a bad time. Ain't never seen you look this down. Bad fight with the boss?" "Worse. A woman at my office came on to me," he said, not meeting her gaze. He then held up his left hand and rubbed the thin gold band with his thumb. Apparently this wasn't enough to ward her off. Betty wiped down the length of the counter with a wet cloth and shook her head. "It never is, baby. Don't mean a damn thing to some people if they don't want it to. They just scoot around diddling every cute thing they see. She knows you're married. She knows better, too. Sounds like you got trouble to me." "Well, honestly, I don't know what the attraction is," he said after a long, cooling swig of Coke. "I mean, I've been hit on by my share of women, even after I got married. Getting stuck with women who are that forward, though, that'll just make a guy feel helpless." "Oh, honey, don't sell yourself short. You're a nice-looking fella, and you don't even have a bad little butt for a white boy." That raised his eyebrows, knowing this woman had at some point assessed his ass. "Let me see a picture of your wife," she said. one hand on her hip and the other leaning heavily on the counter. John looked into her eyes and tried to gauge her motives as he took another drink and pulled his handheld from his pants pocket, turning it on the counter for Betty to see. The picture he kept there was taken a few years before at Carlton's annual steeplechase. For the ladies, part of the event's tradition was wearing a new sundress and hat, and Linda was not one to go against traditions that involved clothes shopping. John caught her by surprise when he took the picture, but it looked as if it had been perfectly posed. Her dark hair flowed out from under the wide brim of the straw hat, her shoulders showing a hint of sunburn in the afternoon light. Someone must have said something funny because when she turned at John's call, she was beaming, her face alight with the pleasure of reveling with close friends and a few very strong mixed drinks. Lord, child, that's a pretty girl. I know you fell for her hard. Like a brick, he said as he turned the picture around so he could look at it. I ask myself every day what she's doing with me, but she never leaves, so I'm happy not knowing the answer. Child, I've gone through 3 husbands asking the same thing. I'm big as a house, ugly enough to scare mice, and ain't got no money worth talking about. So what's a man who's worth anything want with old Betty? The cook muttered something, and she turned to pick up John's order, sliding it in front of him and continuing. It never fails. Every time one of them dies or runs off, sure as I'm standing here, another one will come along right behind him. It's like they're looking for someone to take care of them before they go, and they know my heart's too big to turn them away. Mom always said I was bad about picking up strays, she said with a wry chuckle as she leaned on the counter, her heavy arms crossed over the bosom of the chili-steamed apron. I don't think this woman's intentions were that noble. Right with you, baby, she said, lacing her thick black fingers together, looking thoughtful. Did she show you her titties? Betty asked, straight-faced. Startled by her candor, John had to struggle not to choke on the cheese and chili-laden French fry he was in the middle of swallowing. Confused, he admitted she had. Betty then fired off questions with the skill of a seasoned lawyer looking at a hefty percentage of a harassment settlement. And you said this was in the office? Was it a small room or somewhere private? Yeah, it was in the reference library. It's basically just a little room with a bunch of old books and magazines. Closed off from the rest of the office. Nobody else could see you? And she followed you, right? John nodded yes to every query and ate another French fry, waiting for what the woman would deduce from such sparse information. After a thoughtful pause, she suddenly tossed her dishcloth over her shoulder, put one hand on her hip, and pointed a finger straight at John. Baby, you in big trouble. Why big trouble? John said with his mouth full. She's been flirting with me for 3 months, and I've been blowing her off the whole time. I never knew it was going to come to this. That's exactly the trouble, honey. You did not stop it when you should have, and now it's out of control. I bet my last money those other women, they hit on you on the spur of the moment because you're cute and nice. They thought you'd be a good lay. What? I ain't finished, she said with the greatest sincerity. This girl, she's bad news. She sat down there and planned to trap you in there. She knew what clothes she was going to wear, how she was going to fix her hair, what color to paint her nails, what underwear she'd be wearing, and how much to wax her coochie before you rolled out of bed this morning. So what does that mean? It didn't work, that's all. She should deal with it. Geez, what does she expect? I'm married. That's just it. She don't care about married. For her, marriage ain't nothing more than... Lester, what do they call those paintings where everything's all cattywampus? The cook didn't look up from his work, simply muttering, abstract. That's it, honey. Marriage ain't nothing but an abstraction to this girl. That's why she's so in a snit. She fixed herself up like filet mignon, and from where she's standing, it looks like you're passing that up to go home to leftover meatloaf. Beforehand, you were a challenge. But this was her big play, and you shot her down, and now you can bet she's feeling some kind of way. She might have been thinking about Mr. Johnson down there before, she said as she pointed toward John's crotch, but now that girl's working on revenge. Her diagnosis complete, she turned to the grill and mumbled to herself as she noisily reloaded the basket of fries. Showed her titties, and boy, did it crack. Ain't a woman in the world don't think she can put the mojo on a man by showing him her titties. Somebody must be looking out for you, baby. Who are you talking to, Betty? Lester the cook asked. I hope it ain't that fella at the counter. He blew out of here as soon as you turned around. Betty turned, thinking he was joking. She found only a barely eaten basket of fries and the screen on her pay pad blinking a $20 credit. Lord, keep him safe, she said as she shook her head and rang the order up, running her cash card through to collect the change and tucking it back inside her bra. That boy's going into Babylon.